this episode of Inside Bremerton, you've seen the jet, you've seen the cabin, you may even have seen disc golfers. That's right, we're at Bremerton's N.A.D. Park. Find out how a local nonprofit is breathing new life into one of the city's oldest historical sites. Learn about N.A.D.'s decorated military legacy. We'll also showcase some of the unique features that make this park one of a kind. All this and more, Inside Bremerton starts now. Welcome to Inside Bremerton. This is the City of Bremerton's video newsletter, focusing on issues and topics important to its citizens. We are in the N.A.D. Guardhouse cabin. This is historical. But first of all, we want to talk about N.A.D. Park. This beautiful, beautiful park is located between Kitsap Way and Highway 3. It is absolutely beautiful, and please come and check it out. But we're here to talk about the Guardhouse Cabin Foundation, specifically N.A.D. Guardhouse Cabin Foundation. There's a group of citizens that have taken it upon themselves to refurbish and upgrade this cabin. Joining me first is Bob Dollar. Bob is Vice President and Treasurer of the Foundation. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob's got some history with the City of Bremerton. He has served on numerous committees for the city, including the Parks Commission.
That's correct.
And Bob is a retired PSNS employee,
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
How long have you been doing some city work, committee work and all that?
I started doing committee work when I retired in 2005. And before that, I'd always been involved in community projects.
Mm-hmm. Do you live close to downtown, Bob?
I do. I live right downtown, about a block away from N.A.D.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yes, I moved there on purpose so I could stay right in N.A.D. pocket.
That's awesome. So, Bob, you served a few years on the Parks Commission, so you're familiar with city parks.
You bet.
Tell us about this park. Tell us about N.A.D.
Well, this is a beautiful park. The N.A.D. stands for Naval Ammunition Depot, and it was a ammunition depot from about 1904 up until 1959 when they closed it down and then eventually sold it to the city of Bremerton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's 52 acres here. It has a disc golf course. There's a big jet across the street. And then behind us is a beautiful forested area with an orienteering course in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just absolutely beautiful spot to come visit.
Mm-hmm. It is very, very beautiful. Bob, tell us about conversations you were involved in. How did this save the cabin? How did it all get started?
Well, being on the Parks Commission, I first got on there when they tore the other cabin down across the street, and I wasn't very happy how that happened, but I wasn't involved, so I didn't really know what was going on. And about a year ago, or a year and a half ago, I started asking questions to the Parks Commission and to the Parks Director what was going to happen with this cabin, and because it was being not taken care of very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking into it. I came to ask the Boy Scouts, and the week that I came to ask the Boy Scouts what they were going to do with the cabin, they said, we're moving out, we're leaving. Because I was going to ask them to, we need to do something with this cabin.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't being maintained at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the Boy Scouts moved into this cabin 1989. So some of you might have been in here buying supplies, getting Boy Scout supplies, badges, things like that. And they were in this place from 1989.
Almost everybody I talk to that knows about this cabin knows about it because of the Boy Scouts.
Because of the Boy Scouts. Yeah. When you say the N.A.D. cabin, people will go, oh, you mean the Boy Scout place?
Exactly.
So keep going.
Well,
so they said they were going to move.
They said that they were going to move out, and at that point I decided, well, I need to go back and talk to the people on the Parks Commission, find some people that are interested. I told the Parks Department we didn't want any money from the Parks Department. We weren't expecting the city to do any of it, that we would figure out how to go forward with it, and that's exactly what we're doing by creating the foundation. John Larson, our president, came up with all the paperwork and everything to make this happen, and within about 3 or 4 months, we had a good plan on how to go forward, and here we are.
We're going to hear from John, and we're also going to hear a lot of the history with Bernie Fleming, the history of this cabin, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. Bob, thanks for your time. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to talk to John Larson. Welcome back to Inside Bremerton. As promised, now with us is John Larson. John is the president of the N.A.D. Guardhouse Cabin Foundation. I got it right. John also has many years of serving the city of Bremerton. He served on numerous committees and commissions, including the Parks Commission.
Yes.
Welcome, John. John, tell us a little bit about yourself. You came to Bremerton in 1989 or so?
89. I worked with several engineers, and my last job was with Rice Fergus Miller.
And now you're retired and have lots of time on your hands to do all kinds of good stuff for the city.
Yes.
That's awesome. So, John, when you were on the Parks Commission, were you also, did you serve with Bob?
Yes.
Bob Dollar? So you were privy to conversations about what was going to be happening at the NAD Park?
Yes, and Bob, his enthusiasm with, we can't have this occur again, but with the old cabin being torn down, losing history, losing the asset in the city. Knowing that the city has financial issues and can't maintain it, we developed a plan of citizens coming forward to repair, fix up the cabin without having the city put out money for it.
So, John, outline for us what the goals of the foundation are. This is a cabin, and it's old. So what are the priorities? Just outline for us what the foundation wants to accomplish.
Well, there are sort of two aspects of it. One being that the cabin has some major issues with rot in the logs. Maintenance wasn't done during the time. So one of the foundation's goal is to fix up the cabin and get it in good shape. The second is the city also doesn't have money to run it, and being on the far side or on the west side, quite a ways from their facilities, it would be great to be as a meeting hall, but they can't come out here and manage it and so forth. It's just too far from it. So our purpose is also to then run it as a meeting space and have the funds go back into ongoing maintenance of the cabin. So we're looking at the short term of fixing up the cabin and the long term of having the cabin be maintained.
What kind of money do you need to raise to get this to where you'll be comfortable with it?
We're looking at the total cost over the 4 or 5 year period of about $200,000 to get the cabin completely repaired and upgraded.
What's the first priority that you're going to work on for the cabin once you start getting some money rolling in?
The first one, we have part of our lease agreement with the city is to, within the 5 years period of our lease, is to get the cabin completely redone. In the first year, we're going to do maintenance items, just repair minor carpet and so forth. Second year, we're going to be doing re-roofing and putting in a accessible bathroom. And the third and fourth year is going to be repairing the logs, what foundation work needs to be done, and that's really the major repair work.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, this beautiful 52-acre park is located between Kitsap Way and Highway 3. Totally accessible to many, many people, but many people don't know it's here. And one of my comments I made, this would be a wonderful place to have a wedding. You can't be too big, but this is a beautiful little cabin. When it's redone, an outdoor wedding with refreshments, it would be awesome. Retirement parties,
it's
on and on and on.
Basically, we have 2 rooms what we'd be renting out. One is 400 square feet, and the other is 300. And you can handle easily 49, 48 people. We also have the outside, nice treat area, generally flat, which would be good for outdoor events.
The NAD cabin is, it's historical, and we're going to hear from Bernie about that. But if you're hearing this program and viewing it, This foundation needs your help.
Yes.
They're looking for folks with construction background, communications background. I wrote something else down that I can't remember. Fundraising.
Yes.
So go to their website, which is www.nadgcf.org. They're also on Facebook. You can communicate with John and the entire board there. As far as when they're meeting, they have work parties. They're really looking for community investment, some citizen investment in this.
Yes.
There is a very active disc golf course here.
Yes.
And a very active group of disc golfers. Have they been involved at all, or are they looking at?
We've done preliminary discussions with them, or feelers out to them. We haven't really been able to go and say, here, join us, because we didn't have the lease. We got the lease from the cabin from the city 1st of January. We've been cleaning it out, getting it up and running. Now is our big push to make connections with them. It would be ideal, because they had large tournaments here.
Yes, they do.
We have a space that's available for them on it. Our mission not only is just the cabin, but it's also to see that the park gets taken care of.
Nice.
The park is going to be going through a master planning process this year.
Great.
And we wish to be a part of that. We also are looking at this as a process that could be done in other parks for the city.
Nice.
Forest Ridge has a cabin which is also in disrepair.
That is used by Boy Scouts.
That's used by Boy Scouts, which mainly for the Boy.
Only them, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. But it's also in need of repair. So we're looking at this as a possible prototype method of being able to provide funding for park services in the city.
Very good. Very, very good. John, thank you. Not
Thank
only
you very
for
much.
your enthusiasm for this project, but your commitment and your service to the city.
Thank you.
It's very, very awesome. And thank you for your time today. Stay with us. We're going to talk to Bernie Fleming. He's the historian, and he's got fabulous information on the history of this cabin. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Bremerton. This is Bernie Fleming. Bernie is the historian with this foundation. N.A.D. Guard Cabin Foundation. Guardhouse Cabin Foundation. Bernie is a wealth of knowledge. He is a history buff, self-designated. But tell us a little bit about yourself, Bernie. How long have you lived in Bremerton?
A little less than 10 years now.
You work for the ferry system.
I'm a full-time employee of the ferry system.
And you love that.
Yes. Sometimes.
But today he is the historian of this Guardhouse Cabin Foundation. I'm just going to let you talk about all the history of the knowledge you have about this foundation, about this cabin. Let's get started with, when was it built?
1934, despite what the records may say.
What did the records say?
Well, they're military records. They show 1915, they show various years, but actually 1934 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. And this
What
is
was
unique.
the Civilian Conservation Corps?
Well, height of the Depression, under Roosevelt, as a matter of fact. There were a lot of young men who had nothing to do at the time, and so they made them kind of a quasi-army. It was actually brought up by the Army, and the commander of the troops were the Army, and the Army built this cabin.
But if you joined the CCC, you weren't a military person, or
No,
were you?
No. That's why I say quasi. You were in a way. They had rules you had to follow, and Jan Oakley has written a lot about it. You know, she's one of the prime authors in the Northwest who's written about the CCC. They almost got forgotten because World War II started in 1942. They were disbanded. But what's unusual is they built this cabin as an Army facility. It was actually built under the jurisdiction of the Army. It's one of the only military cabins, in fact, it may be the only military cabin actually built by the CCC. WPA built a lot of buildings.
And what was the
according to
WPA? What does that
Works
mean?
Progress Administration.
Works Progress.
And that's what most people are familiar with, because most of the stone buildings are Works Progress Administration. CCC built buildings like this. A lot of light. Windows are blocked right now, but it's one thing they took from Howard S. Wright was that or Lloyd Wright, they had a lot of light because they didn't have overhead lights. They didn't have any money.
Wow.
And then the Navy took it over, and then the Marine Corps did the guard station. So you have 3 branches of the service right here.
3 branches of the service. So NAD stands for Naval
Naval Ammunition Depot.
So ammunition was stored here?
Yes. Part of the features of the area that are still available for sightseeing are down in Jackson Park, which most people don't want to go into because it's quite a labyrinth of roads. Whereas here, this is right here. This was the original guardhouse, and it shows on the original map. It's an original Navy building. It has a designation, I think 79 was the original number that was given to it. And the original, this is like a microcosm of Bremerton prior to World War II. Just the way it looked. It's got the original lamppost, it's a sequoia tree out here. It's got the original gates, everything. And the guardhouse was built by the CCC the way we did things in 1934. A lot of light, a lot of wood, all built from natural environmental items that they had. One thing, one concession to it is the grout that was put on the surface here, talking to John earlier. This grout was put on as a decorative item. It's not really part of the structure. It was put over the top of the mortar that was used to hold the stones together, and the grout is actually a decoration.
Oh, no.
And remember, these kids that built this thing, and I say kids because I'm almost 70, but these kids were like about 19, 20 years old.
They were young.
The oldest they could be was like 25.
Oh, really?
That was it, cut off.
Wow.
And then...
do you think the kids that built this were actual local Northwest kids, or did they come in from
East Coast.
the East Coast?
Some Northwest, but most of it was East Coast. And they came into the Northwest and they were stationed here. They lived in a bare bones camp here, and the kids who built this one actually went across the way and built Camp Waskowitz.
And where is that located?
That's over in the Cascades, Lower Cascades. It's owned by the Highline School District now. And the kids still camp there. It's one of the best preserved CCC camps in the whole United States.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is basically the way they built it. It's all original wood. You have your original dados, the grooves cut in the walls. You have clear old growth fir for the floors. You have a chimney that was all hand built and hand constructed, and then grouted by these people. And then,
so tell us what, after it was built, what did they do in here? They had guards that would check people going. You showed us an old road behind the building.
This is your gate guard building. This is the actual entrance to the NAD, which comprised many powder magazines, ammunition facilities, 16-inch cannon shells were stored here, all that type of thing. Big stuff.
Big.
At the beginning of World War II, they did machine gun belts. They supplied warships in the South Pacific, all types of stuff. The pictures of this place in operation through the beginning of the nuclear age show guards out front of this building, Marine guards with M1 rifles guarding this facility, because this was a major facility for the Navy at that time, which was eventually absorbed into Bangor and then into Indian Island.
Exactly. Now, so when this was built, we had no highway, we didn't hardly even have a road.
That was the main road.
So the whole NAD park, or the NAD facility, was from Kitsap Way to the bay.
Yeah, this was all this was
Jackson
1904.
Park, 1904.
That's when
Huge.
the sequoia was planted.
Did they congregate in here? Did they, what else, what other
We
kind
would
of?
call this basically, this would be like the muster room. Your troops would muster up here. You'd have your gunnery sergeant or the head of the Marine Guard detail would be in there. This room was added on here. So basically it was this room and that room, and you had a toilet facility in here also. They didn't have to use the woods.
Oh, they did have a toilet.
They did have a toilet.
Wow.
And they had some sort of a septic system.
Bernie, why is it important for us to maintain and keep this building? Why is it important?
This is history. This is the United States before World War II. This is before it all hit the fan. This is the real thing. This was built by the kids who went out and fought the battles.
And then they went down.
Yep. And some of them are still alive. They're in their 90s now. Those few that are left in the United States.
Awesome.
There might even be some people left alive who built this building.
This is your baby. You live close to this.
Well, I look at this as being genuine military all the way. This building has been in service. It was built by tax dollars. It's been in service as a tax service feature since the day it was built, and it still is today. It did the Cub Scouts. It's owned by the city of Bremerton, and the only reason why it's not Navy legacy is because it came in under the Navy legacy radar. This building was historic before it became part of Bremerton, but the Navy history department wasn't really forming up until the mid-60s. Jackson Park was built after this building was transferred to Bremerton.
When was this transferred to Bremerton? Do you
Possibly
remember that?
1961, 62, in sections,
And the Navy forgot about it then?
basically. It wasn't the Navy's anymore. The
Right.
airplane that's displayed out here is still registered to the National Arsenal, but this is not part of the Navy, just like the lampposts and the roads. The road was built by the Navy. Austin Way is a Navy road. It was originally built by the Navy way back when. I don't know when.
Yeah. Wow. So much history. So how did you get involved in this foundation? How did you hear about it?
Bob called me.
Bob Dollar called you? How
Yeah.
did he know you? How did he know you? Do you
Well,
folks-
he knew me through the grapevine of the Chico Creek area, and I'm on
Nice.
Dickerson Creek. I live on
Okay.
Dickerson Creek. I'm kind of a hermit. And he emailed me, and I took a look at it and went, well, now this makes sense. I started tracing down the history. The more involved I got with it, the wider the web got. And pretty soon I was contacting authors and former Navy personnel and so on, and the Navy Museum downtown and so on.
Right.
And as I tracked more into it, it became more complicated. I found it's not just a simple log house that was owned by the Cub Scouts, who saved it, by the way.
Correct.
If it hadn't been for the Cub Scouts, we never, or the Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
we never would have this building.
What-
But
yeah,
now
who knows
we have
what
a
it'd
treasure.
look like.
We
Yeah.
have a very valuable piece of American history that, unless it's saved, it'll decay and rot and go away. It's just wood.
Or get pushed over?
All
or
that's
whatever.
solid is this.
And that's pretty darn solid.
Yep.
We do want to acknowledge that the Boy Scouts were in this facility from 1989 till just the end of 2014.
just, just,
pretty a
last
long
year.
time. They took good care of it, but the maintenance of it, the roof, the logs, that is really what needs really some attention.
This is an old building. Inside it looks nice. It's got a lot of features that cannot be recreated now. We're lucky to have them to even preserve.
And there's a lot of log facilities in this, not only the state, but right here in this county. There are numerous log facilities. Do you know if a log builder has come to look at this place yet?
Not yet. There have been restorations. Deer Park up on the Olympic Peninsula was originally built by the CCC. The three-sided lean-tos up there are original and have been restored by the National Park Service. I've been up there recently within the past couple of years. My wife was rather horrified, but we took the drive up there. It's a one-lane dirt road.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's interesting to see. Same sort of concept. And the majority of CCC constructed buildings are earth berms or things that didn't matter. This is the only one that anybody's put their finger on that really was functional to the military.
Right.
We had them function for the Park Service and many other aspects, but the military, this is it. This is called Navy 1, Ostrich
This
Bay.
building, Navy 1.
Was the CCC unit that built this was Navy 1, Ostrich Bay. And that's it. There was never a Navy 2 that I've been able to find.
Any idea how many folks actually worked on this? Do you have that information?
All I've been able to ascertain so far is during World War II, this base was up to 1,600 personnel, including women, African Americans, and regular military, including Army and Navy.
That's a lot.
This was an active base. This had a gun range, it had bowling alleys, it had theaters, it had everything.
For World War, because
All that's
World
really
War
left
II
is
was
right
happening.
here. World War II, this was a base that supported the effort in the South Pacific. And there are still people alive today that owe their lives to the ammunition that came out of this base.
You are a wealth of knowledge. Are you? Is that just your hobby, history,
Yes.
and military history?
Yes, a lot of history. I've always enjoyed it.
Did you serve in the military?
3 branches.
3.
I was in the Army, Air Force, and Navy. I retired from the Air Force,
You did.
21 years. I was with the Washington Air National Guard.
Great.
But that's over in Everett.
Uh-huh.
My wife
Wow.
works for the Federals now. She works up at Bangor. She's a GS there.
So military history is your thing.
Well,
It's
yes,
kind of
my
a
dad
hobby.
was in the Air Force also during World War II.
Wow.
Now, and to me, that was yesterday, but I mean, to everybody else now, that might have been a long time ago.
You're right. We thank you. What a gem, what a wealth of information, not only to this foundation, but really this community, because you have a lot, you've done a lot of research. You talked to us about an old road back here.
That was originally the guard road. They started out with horses, and then the peripheral guard ran on jeeps. So this place actually evolved from the horse military to the modern military.
Yeah.
Basically, the missiles and the nuclear weapons and everything is when they closed this down. When they started out here, they wore blue uniforms with gold buttons, and when they left here, they wore khakis.
Right?
So,
Right.
you know, it's all changed.
Right.
But the peripheral road is still there. I've taken a couple of the cameramen around to take a look at it, and
Excellent.
it's there with a couple of lights and so on.
Wow.
There's a lot of vestiges of the original Navy still left here from prior to World War II. It's like going into a John Wayne movie. You know, it's right
You're
here.
right. You're right. That's great.
Except this is the real deal.
This is the real deal. Absolutely. So envision this cabin upgraded, modernized inside, accessible restroom, beautiful facility to have party, wedding, reunion, meeting, great, great venue. And hopefully in 5 years' time, as this foundation takes on the task of raising money and getting the work done, in 5 years, we should see the fruits of that labor, and who knows what the next project will
Well,
be.
this is a pearl. We need to save it. We're never
Well
gonna
said.
there's not going to be
It's not
another
coming
one.
back.
It's not coming back.
It's
If this
not
goes
coming
down,
back.
it all goes down.
You're right. Please go to the website www.nadgcf.org. And they're also on Facebook if you'd like to get involved. If you want to come by and check this place out, check it out. We're on Austin Drive between Kitsap Way and Highway 3.
No military ID required. And you won't have to stand guard either.
You won't. Thanks for joining us on Inside Bremerton. We'll see you next time.